Welcome to the Reconnection Club podcast, the show that helps parents heal troubled relationships with their adult sons and daughters. I'm your host, psychotherapist Tina Gilbertson. Each week, I'll offer you compassion, clarity, and personal development tips designed to help you reconnect, not only with your child, but with yourself. Now let's get started. Today I'd like to talk about the concept of personality disorders and how they both do and don't affect estrangement between adult children and their parents. In case you have to be somewhere, here's the short version. I would like us all to stop diagnosing each other with mental illness and focus on what we can do to be kind and show up for all our relationships with our own best foot forward. But if your child has a real and true, properly diagnosed personality disorder, then it's best to treat it as a medical disorder and realize that she's limited in the ways she can relate to other people unless and until she gets treatment and gets better. I've got a lot of thoughts about personality disorders, so today's episode might come out as sort of an idea salad rather than a coherent set of information. But I hope that within that salad, there's something for everyone to take away with them and chew on, as it were. But first, I have to be honest and tell you that I have never liked the term personality disorder. To me, that is the most damning label anyone could possibly think of. If your very personality is disordered, is there any hope at all of anyone being able to relate to you, or vice versa? It's just a very ugly phrase, in my opinion. But I've noticed that parents often seem to place a lot of emphasis on personality disorders in their adult children when those children choose to become estranged. If there's any shadow of an inkling, of a hint of a personality disorder in the child, the parent will read all about it and do a ton of research and usually become convinced that their child does indeed have that disorder. The problem with this is that it gives the parent a reason to suspect that the child's decision to become estranged is not based on anything in the real world or anything about the actual relationship that they share. Instead, the parent assumes that the disorder is distorting the child's perception to the point where they're completely out of touch with reality. And in that case, the parent is left with nothing to do but worry and fret and feel powerless to change things. If a personality disorder explains the estrangement behavior, the parent may feel a sense of relief that it's not all their fault. But that relief is a double-edged sword because it also means that there is no hope for the parent to make repairs because there's nothing in the real world that's wrong if it's all in the child's head. Now, let me just quickly establish what personality disorders are. They are labels that correspond to a particular list of symptoms. Let me say that again. A personality disorder is a label that corresponds to a particular list of symptoms. It is not an explanation for why people do what they do. It's just like any medical diagnosis. It doesn't explain the symptoms, it just describes them. Appendicitis, for example, means inflammation of the appendix. We know what it is. Doctors have tools to deal with it, but there's no mention there of why your appendix might be inflamed. Back to personality disorders. The reason these exist and get on our radar is because, indeed, there are people walking around who suffer from these symptoms. And your child might be one of them. I hope not. Statistically speaking, less than 2% of the population is thought to have borderline personality disorder, for example. But that does leave almost 5 million people in the U.S. alone who do have it. That's where this gets tricky because, yes, If your child does have a so-called personality disorder, especially borderline, but also narcissistic personality disorder, their symptoms can make it extra difficult for anyone to have a successful relationship with them. That includes friendships and work relationships, of course, not just family. But how much of your child's estrangement is caused by a personality disorder is a matter of debate. Your child might claim that a personality disorder has nothing to do with her behavior toward you. She would likely point to your behavior as inciting her need to retreat. If you, as a parent, assume that a personality disorder is the reason for your child seeking distance, two things follow from that. Number one, you will likely give offense to your child. And number two, you lose the opportunity to address relationship-level dynamics that you actually might have some control over and be able to make better. Those two facts combined should steer you away from peering too closely at your child's mental health as a causative factor in estrangement. It may certainly be a complicating factor, but you want to be very careful about assuming causation. Let me expand a little on that first point, the fact that your child would be offended to know that you think their estrangement was caused by a problem with their personality. Imagine if you felt hurt by someone important to you, and when you told them that you felt hurt, they responded by saying, "If you're hurt, then there's obviously something wrong with you." Not only are they failing to hear you out and try to make it right, they're taking the opportunity to make you feel bad about yourself. And you may even have experienced this. Maybe your child has hurt you deeply with their words or behavior, and may have even suggested that you have a personality disorder. It doesn't feel very respectful when someone labels you as disordered at the level of your personality, let alone refuses to hear that they've hurt you. So there is this tension between the reality that some people are more challenging to be close to than others for various reasons, and the fact that to assume it's the disorder talking when your child becomes estranged is very dismissive of your child as an individual with valid thoughts and feelings of his own. But let's assume there is a personality disorder. How can you deal with that fact in a way that is respectful and forwards your aim of reconciliation? Well, first, I think you need to get clear on your feelings toward your child. It's very tempting to concentrate on their feelings and their actions toward you, but how do you feel about this personality disordered person who happens to be your child? How close would you want to be if she were willing? Second, take responsibility for the relationship you want to have and get clear on what that might require. You can't control what your child brings to the table. You can only do you. If your child shows symptoms of borderline personality disorder, for example, it will take tons of patience on your part to remain close and calm and peaceful and not take some of their worst behavior personally. In short, you will need to get to a place where you can accept the fact that it takes more work to have a relationship with someone with a personality disorder in many cases. And talking about their disorder, thinking and reading about it, is not doing your share of the work. It doesn't get either of you anywhere. It just solidifies your view that your child is the problem. That's why I said up front that if we decide we want to be close to someone with a personality disorder, the way that might best work is to focus on what we are bringing to the table, not on how disordered they are. As I get ready to wrap this up, let me leave you with this. If your child had a traumatic brain injury, heaven forbid, and couldn't speak or respond to you when you were with them, would you abandon them? Would you take their silence personally? I doubt it. I think you would accept your child's limitations and just focus on giving them all the love that you feel toward them, helping them feel loved and not expecting much in return that they're not capable of giving. If your child truly has a personality disorder, try to see it as a medical condition that limits what they can do, because that is exactly what it is. And the question is, what do you want to bring to that relationship to make it the best it can possibly be? Until next time, remember that you are a loving, lovable, and still growing human being. So please take good care of yourself. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Reconnection Club podcast, I invite you to check out reconnectionclub.com. The Reconnection Club is for parents at any stage of estrangement from their adult, child, or children. So whether you've just realized there's trouble between you, you've been living with estrangement for years, or you're newly reconciled but still walking on eggshells, the Reconnection Club is your essential resource for information, support, and continued personal growth. With our courses and workshops, expert interviews, monthly Q&A calls, and a friendly, active community, the Reconnection Club is a wonderful place to be for anyone suffering the pain of estrangement from an adult, child, or children. So check it out at reconnectionclub.com.